two good? Good to go? Right. Good afternoon, Theatre 4. Thank you for coming along today. It's the last talk of the day in here and it is packed. This is lovely, lovely to see. Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? So good. The tech is working. That is awesome. So I'm Kelly Molson. I'm a digital strategist for the visitor attraction sector and I'm your chair today. I'm going to keep everyone in check, keep them on time and introduce our fantastic speakers. We have got Spencer Clark, the Managing Director of ATS, and Steve Daring, Director Strategic Partnerships at Direct Access Consultancy. They are going to talk to you today about breaking down barriers, essential accessibility tips for visitor attraction. So please give them a warm welcome.
Hey, can everyone hear me? Nods, 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 hands up. Brilliant, thumbs up. Thank you. Hi, I'm Spencer Clark. I'm the MD at ATS. So just a little bit of context on background. So how I actually ended up in this lovely sector we work in 13 years ago. Prior to that, my sister Lucy, who's profoundly deaf, we both had a deaf awareness training company and we did British Sign Language video recordings, as well as training to front of house, mostly in healthcare. And by chance, we fell into meeting ATS, who were looking to do British Sign Language tours. This was some 15, 16 years ago. So using digital devices. So it's quite innovative to have a personal guide with a BSL tour on it. So we used to do the filming for it. And over time, I then got to know ATS and I jumped on board, which is great because now I have this kind of genuine passion and drive for access and inclusion, and a great company to do it from. So that's fab. And yeah, I've known Stephen a little while now. He's going to give an intro, but I think we've got a great talk ahead, hopefully, from feedback we've heard from some of the surveys. So.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Dave. Hopefully you can hear me. Before we start, I have a hearing impairment, but I'm deaf. What that does mean is that sometimes I can't hear my own voice. But if I start talking a bit too quietly, please raise your hand and I will speak up. I do have a sign language interpreter in the front row who will kindly help interpret any questions that people may have at the end. So that's who I am. I worked with Direct Access, which is an accessibility consultancy for the past 7 years, working mainly in the Middle East, but now back here in the UK, developing our partnership with different organisations that we work with.
Super. So just a little overview. So I said about working with ATS and what we do. We're in the middle of the stand, not far from Stephen. Do come and see us. So we're around basically three main areas of visitor experience, understanding everything around that, visitor flow, interpretation and storytelling is a big key part of it, and then the right technology. So between those three things, that's kind of where our expertise lie. And we provide consultancy, working with partners like Stephen and Direct Access on access, storytelling, but we also design and produce all of the content as well. So sign language videos, we do audio described tours, and we'll explain a little bit more about that. Yeah, so a bit of a one-stop shop on all of that. So we do a couple of elements of what we're going to be talking about today, but Stephen's got some great info for you all, which again, kind of fed back off what the survey was indicating.
Well, I've got quite a lot to live up to now, so thank you very much for that. So, Direct Access has been around for about 20 years now with an accessibility and inclusion consultancy. We have a team of 18, most are disabled people, which provides some of that vital lived experience for accessibility. We are a certified disability enterprise, which means that we have that representation throughout. And we have a broad client base from small community museums to some of the largest United Nations World Heritage sites. We have studios, as we call them, offices in Boston in the US, Nantwich and here in London, and also in Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. So thank you. So just a little bit about what we do. Predominantly as a consultancy, which is working with architects and design teams on new builds, but also where museums and galleries are redeveloping like we do a disability audit, which is looking at where an organisation is in terms of disability. And this is something that is often required by a heritage lottery application or art council funding. So we've got a lot of experience with that. If you are visiting our stand over at Dick, I think, later, you will see that we've got the tactile map model. So please do come and have a look at that. And we also do some adjustable format. Spencer?
So like I said, we've been producing British Sign Language tours and audio described tours for quite a few years. There's always been a bit of a barrier for organisations actually committing to creating better access. And I know what we do is quite niche, and it's only a couple of elements of what makes up an inclusive site. So discussing with Stephen, we run a survey. We did this in Ireland last year, and we did it in England today prior to this talk. And really, there's the three main barriers for any organisation, it seemed little or small, and indoor, outdoor, was essentially there was a lack of funding. I would say there's probably a perceived lack of funding, maybe. We need to look at where funding prioritises. Limited resources internally. I think you might all empathise, and I've seen it when I'm out, is that post-COVID, internal resources are pretty stretched. But there is that somebody who can drive the project forward doesn't necessarily exist, and it's quite difficult to do internally. But then the big question was they don't really know where to begin. So there was a load of other areas of barriers, but it was a bit of a, we don't know what we don't know. So from the back of that, we did a presentation in Ireland, like I said, and then Steve and I got together and said, okay, Stephen, where do we start? How do they begin? And can we give some really good practical tips to you all so you can leave with something about what you could actually do at your site to improve access and inclusion?
So in order to put the numbers to this, to give you an idea, 54% of people that have access requirement will avoid going to a new place if they can't find information about accessibility. Let me give you like a personal story on this. Obviously, I rely on sign language interpreters or caption. I live in Crewe in the northwest. If I want to go and watch a theatre performance, for me, it's not a problem. 4-hour drive to maybe London or Birmingham. Watch a theatre performance that finished maybe 10 o'clock at night, and then a 4-hour drive home. So that's an 8-hour round trip just to do something that's deductible. So if you think about what that means, the impact for disabled people, so 63% of businesses, which include museums and heritage sites, do not promote their facilities. So if you've got the most accessible museum in the world, are you telling people about it? Because if they don't know that you've got an accessible facility, they may not attend because they may think that you're not accessible. So the other thing that we need to consider is that with an aging population, with different accessibility requirements, they're going to be an even larger proportion of your visitors. There's a 31% increase in the number of domestic trips taken by the age group for 55 and over. Can you afford to miss out on that? So, in order to add a little bit to that, what we do at Direct Access is obviously accessibility and inclusion for our people, for disabled people. But when you start thinking about how you are being inclusive for people who are wheelchair needed or people with mobility impairment, people with sight loss, who are deaf or hard of hearing, or who have a hidden disability or maybe a non-apparent disability. Once we are inclusive and welcoming of those 4 groups, we automatically become more inclusive for families, but particularly with young children. Elderly people, maybe they're unsteady on their feet or they need more time to access facility. People with mobility, temporary injury as well, and expectant mothers. So once we think about all of those, we become more inclusive. So the best way to do that is to undertake an accessibility audit. It's a snapshot of where you are in terms of your site at the moment. And there's a lot here, but just to sort of pick up on a few of these, the best way to think about it is when someone arrives at your site, what is the process they go through? So whenever they arrive at public transport, is your car parking facility accessible? Can people understand how to get from the car park to your entrance? And once they get in, what way do they find their way around? Are the bathrooms accessible? And it's not just about how people get into a building. How do they get out if there's an emergency or if they finish their visit? So there's quite a few things to think about. Then from that accessibility audit, you create a prioritized action plan. We live in a challenging time, budget wise, where we have to think about the implication. How do we balance what needs to be done now? What may need funding application? What may need to be thought about in the future? The beauty of the action plan is to give you a clear goal. You know what you're going to be doing tomorrow. You know what you're going to be doing in 6 months' time. And you can sort of structure with the cost. The quick, easy to win, which doesn't cost anything. It could be something as simple as a management procedure. Minimal ongoing maintenance and structural change. The benefit of this is, particularly as I said earlier, if you're applying to the Heritage Lottery or to the Art Council, having this provide a solid evidence base that you've thought about how you're going to create more inclusion and what some of the funding benefits will be.
So I think as part of the talk, we were talking about where do we start. This is a really great way of kind of putting down the priorities and then looking at, well, how do you going to resource this moving forward? We've put together a few slides. They're very kind of high level, general on different disabilities and the types of things that then come out of the action plan. This is not an exhaustive list, but it definitely gives you some indications, and we'll explain a few of these things that are available. And you can see them obviously at the stands and have a further conversation around them. But we're going to look at visually impaired visitors to start with.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so touch map. So if you have a look at our stand later on, you'll be able to see touch map, which are sort of tactile versions that allow people to feel and understand the layout of a building. Or if you've got something that's uniquely designed, that people can feel the shape and what the artist or architect interpretation was meant to be. Then yeah. Touch objects, they are very similar. Sometimes you might have objects which are in glass cased because people are not meant to touch those. But how does someone with a visual impairment understand what are the visual images? This is where touch objects come in. Spencer?
So I did a talk a little while ago with the digitization team. You may have seen it or not, but again, on our stand, we've done a lot of 3D photogrammetry scanning of objects. And one of the outputs of that not only is the digital twin, but we've actually started to do 3D replicas of the objects. So this is an absolute, you can see the color and the texture. It's actually scanned into, it's printed into the actual object. So it's getting really, really close. This is a mini version. Over on the stand is the actual size version. But again, this links into the digitization projects that are going on. There's other outputs that can feed into inclusivity and access. So touch objects, the actual size with the actual feel of what the actual object is really, yes, big opportunity on that one. Audio described tours. So that is kind of what this is self-led predominantly. So it's a script that we've written. So usually you work along an existing script. So you might have an audio tour of a site or a gallery or a collection or a museum. And what we do with the audio describe is we get a specialist writer, and it's a blend of storytelling and interpretation of what can be seen, but it also adds in the opportunity for wayfinding and orientation. So it might give instructions on how to actually physically get around sites. What we also do with audio described, it's not where British Sign Language tours are essentially a translation of English. it's a language. With audio described, the writers will tend to look for those opportunities so it might not match the exact audio tour for a conventional audio tour, or what it might do is look for those objects that you can touch, or walls that you can feel, or textures, things that would enhance an experience for a visually impaired visitor. So they are very different and very bespoke. So we walk the course, walk the tour, and the scripts come developed from that, and they're written by visually impaired people and tested as well. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into them. And then you have them available on audio guides usually, or potentially as apps as well, for them to walk and experience audio described tours.
Well, what I'd add to that is maybe on your way home tonight, if you Google Freunden audio description, there's a really, really nice clip for about 2 minutes on YouTube where there's no one talking on the Freunden film, but the audio narration of how the snowman and the reindeer across the icy lake is just fantastic, and it's worth having a look at to actually understand how a good, effective audio description would work.
Yeah. You made the last two, well, the middle two, the live audio description and audio description for video and film. You may have noticed that if you've accidentally pressed the AD button on your remote control and you'll hear someone talking, and at first it's kind of strange, but actually then it's really interesting. You can watch that at home and you get an understanding of what the audio description is doing and how it's enhancing. I know there's been some good good adverts on BBC and stuff kind of explaining how that works as well. But yeah, that's another thing, is if you're doing live, you can have that live interpretation, or you could have existing content in your archives that you might want to then go look at. If you put them on display, you might want to put audio description, and you'd have a writer who would take the script, watch the video, and then write an audio described layer of script over the top. We've worked with a company called Vocalize quite a lot over the years, and I would say that's a really good go-to charity based out of London, but work all around the UK. They do training and stuff as well, as audio described, working with us. So that's a good one.
Yeah, so this image is something that was installed at the Expo 2020 Museum in Dubai last week. They were brand new, so you're one of the first people to actually see it, because it's not yet open to the public. So this is the kind of tactile map model that explains the layout of the museum. So this white bit is the model there, English Arabic, both English and Arabic Braille as well. Then there's QR codes which allowed for aesthetic sign language and also audio description. Then something a bit more local here is the Roman bath in Somerset. As I mentioned earlier, you might have a situation where you've got a model that people can see visually, but for someone with a visual impairment, that won't make any sense, which is why you have this sort of touch object on the right-hand side, which gives people the opportunity to feel and understand what the object is. Then moving on to deaf and hard of hearing visitors, person-led sign language tours are very, very useful as a way of engaging deaf people and sort of explaining in their language what the museum or attraction is about.
Yeah, video sign language. I told you my backstory. That's kind of where it came from. So, you'll be familiar with it on television news. It's far more prevalent now. So having video sign language, so you have an interpreter actually interpret the script, understand what it is into sign language, and translate it. So just quite a few people don't understand it is actually a language, so it gets translated, and it's all unique to the site as well. You can't just necessarily read a script and turn it into BSL. It needs context. So you might be talking about, well, show me the window. But the window could be like this, or a window could be like this, or a window could be like this. So it's all very visual. So it's really contextual to the script. So it's quite a speciality into interpreting, especially in heritage and culture. I have to say, there's some quite nuances there to everyday language. Captioning video as well. So not every deaf person signs. So their first language might be British Sign Language, or American Sign Language, or a sign language. But those who may have gone deaf in old age, they may not hear, so their first language is English. So they don't know sign language, so that's why the captioning is there. So back in the day, it's more common now, but back in the day, people say, well, why would you have a signer and a caption? It's because you've got two different kind of language understanding there. Stage text. I think you've had experience with that, Steve.
Yes, the data is a decathlon service that when you look at a stage, it would be to one side, and you had like 2 rows of text. So whatever's being performed or demonstrated will be shown on the stage text. I personally find that quite good for data performance because you can then watch the data performance, turn to look at the captions, and then move back. Some people, as Spencer quite rightly said, for them, sign language is the first language, so they would prefer sign language interpreted. So it's a case of working out which is the most appropriate for your audience and positioning them in the right place. Some of you may be working with real live demonstration, though maybe historical demonstration. If you can incorporate sign language within that, then that can be quite powerful. And that's more sort of inclusive rather than having an interpreter to one side.
The last one, BSL AI. I think you've heard of AI. I think there's been a bit of a buzz. But Jenny, so one of the big challenges going back to the first slide is funding, but also cost. You could put that into cost. So the cost of creating an hour's worth of BSL video can be out of the budget reach for some organizations. So for us, wanting better access, that's an immediate barrier that museums can't afford to necessarily do that. So we have partnered with a company. So over the last year, it's an AI BSL company. So what we're doing is we're training the system at the moment. So we're putting all of our heritage-based scripts. So when we do audio tours, we're putting our scripts in, and the machine is learning how to turn that into sign language. Now, we're not using avatars as the signer. We're using human signers. And what the system is doing is creating, so we have human signers. You'll be able to choose your type of signer. Would you believe, you get voice and you get different types of narrators, you get different types of signers, and they flow differently. So depending on what you're talking about, you can have a beautiful, they have an accent to their signing. They do. So having someone beautiful to look at as far as their signing capability is really important. So we have these human signers that essentially we put the feed in and it will create it faster, cheaper, and we can put access out. So from us, it means more people should have access because you should be doing it more because it's cheaper and faster to do. So I'm really proud of that we're trying to push it forward. It's already prevalent in transport because I have quite a small language base for the machine to learn. But you can imagine in heritage and culture, there's a lot more nuances and stuff to learn. So we're working with that and hopefully be pushing that out. So you can then put it on an app or on a device, but essentially it's trying to bring the cost level down to make it more accessible and hopefully more tours out there in sign language.
Okay, so moving on to looking at physical access. So think about visitor experience opportunity. Virtual tours, similar to what Spencer and 88, ATS offer. They can be delivered on touchscreen, iPad, and multimedia guides. But you need to think about, don't just rush off completely into the digital world. Think about someone who got arthritis or maybe they got cancer. They will generally have quite cold hands, and touchscreens may not work if you've got cold hands. So you need to think about other options and not just a digital touchscreen. Then there's wayfinding and orientation. So if you've got ramps and step-free access, which is a different way to step route, you need to make that clear through wayfinding standards, maybe colour code an 810. There are innovative ways of being different and making your stuff stand out. Just need to be consistent throughout. Then ramp parking, so if the parking is near the main entrance, or if your parking is further away, do you have the opportunity to reserve 1 or 2 spaces near your entrance for people that may need to go that far? Then last on here is something called changing places. So I should briefly explain that. So this is a new campaign that's been around for about 5-10 years. most of you will, well, hopefully most of you will know what an accessible toilet is, where someone in a wheelchair can self-transfer from the wheelchair onto the toilet pan and back again. But sometimes people with significant impairment may require the assistance of one or two personal assistants or carers. For them, a change in place they provide a hoist and changing that so that they can transfer from one to the other, get changed and then back. That has actually revolutionised the level of accessibility of the UK for many people with severe disability. There is some government funding, particularly for those of you that work in organisations with a big footfall. So when you're doing any refurbishment, you will need to be aware of some of the changes in the legislation around this. Then also neurodivergent, that autism, that becoming increasingly more aware of what people need to consider. So some of you may be aware of some quiet periods, maybe you're open for an hour earlier or an hour later, where the music is turned down. You might have the lights on full, depending on your environment. So that then makes it more easier for someone who's neurodivergent to be able to access. Some of you may go to B&Q, which I think on the Thursday morning normally will have an hour session where they are more open and that kind of environment. And that's the sort of thing that works really well for museums. Then quiet spaces, particularly if you are in a facility where there's lots of noise, lots of machines or sound, or all kinds of things. Having a quiet space will give people who are overstimulated time to say, right, okay, I need 5-10 minutes, and then come back and enjoy the rest of what you've got to offer. So supporting that will be sensory maps, which I'll come on to in a little bit. Then there's headset and noise cancelling content, which ATS are looking at developing. Then fidget products. So I don't have a pen with me, but sometimes if I get a bit nervous, then I might be holding something that could give me a bit more confidence. So some people with autism will fidget, and it's useful to have that available. And also some after guides, which I'll come on to. So some of the other tools, Visit Britain, you'll be able to see a link up there, which is actually quite easy to remember. This is quite a good website. You should fill in a few questions and it will create an asset guide for you. It's not the most detailed, complicated, but as Spencer and I were saying earlier, it's important about starting somewhere. And that's quite a good one. So sensory maps here outline just how noisy or how quiet a space is. Somewhere is a bit more tactile than others, where they may be found. So that will give people a bit more confidence to navigate on their own around your facility. So that's just an example on the right.
So I only saw this week, actually. Someone shared it with me. Pre-visit information. So a lot of sites, when we did the survey, a lot of people said we don't really tell people about how accessible we are on the website. And that's a really key thing, because people go there to buy tickets and plan their visit. So this is the key place to say it. If you can take a picture of this is Skipton Town Hall. I was just really impressed with just the simplicity. It's got photos of the entrances and exits. It's got lovely, just simple explanation of what you can expect when you get there. It can be made up of photographs. It's got videos on there, but really stuff you can do in-house, really. It's not too difficult, but it's just going through and just making people, because a lot of people, especially with autism stuff, when they've got anxiety, is what's it going to be like when I get there? What can I expect? So what can you do to visualize and make that come alive? So I'd highly recommend having a quick look at that. I know we're running out of time, so we're going to quickly skip in. I have to say, going back again, the story, the big thing, the challenge was a lot of stuff just didn't have the knowledge, the awareness, not necessarily the skills, but even just having some of that empathy on what accessibility is about. And again, they might feel quite anxious that I'm not sure if I can ask that question, but ultimately you need to ask those questions because not everybody knows what it's like to work or deal with someone with a disability. So basic training awareness, I would say, is almost your first step straight away, and then heading on into your audits.
And then,
Bang on time.
yes,
There we go. There are links if you want to get in touch. Yeah.
Yeah,
Feel free to come see us.
Thank you very much. Do we have time for questions?
Sure. We've got time for questions.
We've got a little couple of minutes for questions. Yeah, I wrongly said that this was the last talk of the day. So I have been misinformed, people. So we do have another one coming in, but we've got a couple of minutes for questions.
Oh, okay.
So I was wondering how you meet the challenges of having sort of sensory maps and pre-visit information in line with security concerns about sort of potential terrorist activity and such like, and hostile reconnaissance and that sort of thing.
That's quite good. It depends on your kind of organisation. So you are in control of how much information is put out there. Obviously, if you're a high risk organisation, you would need to sort of limit that. The best way is to actually sort of consult with some disability stakeholders and just ask them what information do they need, and then work out what information you can give and what you can't give. It might be that you're better off just staying on your website, but okay, for security implications, we can't go into detail, but when you arrive at reception, we can explain.
Thank you. I'm so sorry we're out of time for this studio, but you can find Spencer and ATS on stand K4, and you can find Steve and Direct Access Consultancy on stand M6. So please go over and see them today. Take all your questions for them and give them a massive round of applause.
Okay.